The silent scream. The mining colony ship Kethvara drifted through the asteroid field of the Velari system, its cargo holds filled with precious metals extracted over 6 months of careful work. Captain Thera stood at the observation deck, her forearms crossed in satisfaction as she watched the twin suns set behind the largest asteroid. Her scaled skin shimmered with patterns of contentment, a biological display unique to the Velkan people. The journey home to Velkara Prime would take 14 cycles. But her crew of 47 had earned their rest. The Velkan were a peaceful species, evolved from herbivorous herd animals on a world with gentle gravity and abundant resources. They had ventured into space seeking knowledge and resources, never warfare. Their ships were designed for efficiency and safety, not combat. The very concept of military vessels seemed barbaric to their culture. Violence was a thing their ancestors had left behind millennia ago. Thera's second officer, Norvin, approached with a data tablet clutched in his primary hands. His scales flickered with uncertainty, colors shifting between blue and yellow. The long-range sensors detected unusual readings, Captain. Multiple ships approaching our position at high velocity. Their profiles do not match any known commercial or civilian vessels. Before Thera could respond, alarms shrieked throughout the Kethvara. The gentle hum of the engines changed pitch, becoming strained and desperate. Through the viewport, Thera saw them. 7 vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel, their hulls painted in aggressive patterns of red and black. These were warships, bristling with weapon ports and armored plating that reflected the distant starlight like blood on dark water. The Zothrak Confederation. Thera's scales turned pale gray, the color of absolute fear. Every species in this sector knew about the Zothrak. They were raiders, slavers, and conquerors who had carved out a brutal empire through sheer savagery. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not take. Captured crews were sold into slavery, or used as forced labor in their prison mines. "Contact all hands," Thera commanded, forcing her voice to remain steady despite the terror coursing through her. Emergency protocols. Prepare for possible boarding action. She knew how futile it was. The Kethvara had no weapons, no shields beyond basic radiation barriers. They were miners, not warriors. The Zothrak warship spread out in a hunting formation, cutting off every possible escape vector. Thera tried desperately to plot a course through the asteroids, hoping the larger rocks might provide cover. But the enemy ships were too fast, too maneuverable. The first shot came without warning. A pulse of superheated plasma struck the Kethvara's engine section, overloading the reactor containment field. Emergency systems kicked in, flooding the engine room with coolant, but the damage was catastrophic. The ship went dead, all power diverted to life support and gravity. They floated helplessly at the mercy of their attackers. A transmission crackled through the communication system. The voice was harsh, speaking in trade language with an accent that made every word sound like a threat. "Velkan vessel, you are now property of the Zothrak Confederation. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in immediate execution of your crew. Compliance will earn you a swift transfer to processing facilities. You have 1 planetary rotation to decide your fate." Thera looked at Norvin, then at the faces of her crew displayed on the monitoring screens throughout the ship. They were terrified, their scales displaying every shade of fear and despair. She had led them to this. Her decision to mine this remote system, her route planning, her inadequate security preparations, the weight of responsibility threatened to crush her. "We have no weapons, no defenses," Norvin said quietly. "What can we do?" Thera moved to the communication station. There was one option, though it violated several interstellar treaties. The Velkan had signed agreements with dozens of species, promising never to broadcast on certain frequencies reserved for military communications. Those channels were considered dangerous, belonging to species too aggressive or unpredictable to contact casually. But Thera was desperate. "Activate the emergency beacon," she ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies, including the restricted military channels." Her crew stared at her in shock. "Captain, the treaties," someone protested. "Forget the treaties," Thera snapped, her scales flashing bright orange with determination. "We need help from anyone willing to give it, even if it means contacting the predator species." The beacon went active, sending out a powerful signal in all directions. It carried their coordinates, their situation, and a simple message in the universal distress format. "This is Velkan mining vessel Kethvara. We are under attack by Zothrak raiders. Crew of 47, requesting immediate assistance." Please, anyone who can hear this, help us. The transmission burst through space at the speed of light, spreading outward in an expanding sphere. Most of it would dissipate into the cosmic background, lost forever. But some of it would reach listening posts, monitoring stations, and ships equipped to detect such signals. The question was whether anyone would care enough to respond. 3,000 light-years away on the edge of mapped space, observation post Delta 7 hung in the darkness like a mechanical spider. The station was small, housing only 22 personnel, but it bristled with sensor arrays and communication equipment. Its mission was simple: listen to everything happening in this sector of space and report back to Earth. Commander Marcus Webb sat in the monitoring center, reviewing the day's data collection. He was a career officer, 48 years old, with graying hair and the patient demeanor of someone who had spent decades watching and waiting. Most days brought nothing but background radiation and commercial chatter. Today was different. "Sir?" Ensign Ramirez called out, her voice sharp with urgency. "I am picking up a distress signal on multiple frequencies, including the restricted military band. It is a Vulcan vessel under attack by what appears to be Zothrak raiders." Webb moved to her station immediately. "Display the data." The information scrolled across his screen. He saw the coordinates, read the desperate message, and felt his jaw tighten. The Vulcan were known to human intelligence as peaceful traders and miners. The Zothrak were classified as a hostile slaving empire, dangerous and unpredictable. Verify the signal authentication. Make sure this is not a trap. Ramirez worked quickly, running the message through analysis protocols. Signal appears genuine, Commander. The encryption patterns match Vulcan commercial vessels. There are biological stress markers in the vocal transmission. Whoever sent this is genuinely terrified. Webb made his decision in seconds. "Get me Admiral Voss at Terra Command. Priority Alpha. Use the quantum link." The response came within minutes. Fleet Admiral Helena Voss appeared on the main screen, her face weathered by years of command but her eyes sharp and focused. She wore the uniform of the Terran Defense Force, the silver stars on her collar catching the light. "Commander Webb, I received your alert. Show me what you have." Webb transmitted all the data. Voss studied it in silence, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "This is exactly the scenario Protocol Iron Shield was designed for. We will not stand by while innocents are slaughtered by slavers. Activate the fleet." Webb felt his pulse quicken. Protocol Iron Shield was humanity's pledge to protect vulnerable species from aggression. It had been established after Earth joined the interstellar community, a statement of purpose that many other species found baffling. Why would humans, newcomers to galactic civilization, care about the fate of strangers? The answer was simple: because it was the right thing to do. "I want every available ship at Rally Point Sigma within 2 hours, Voss continued. "This is a combat operation against a confirmed hostile force. Rules of engagement are weapons-free on positive identification of aggressors. Civilian protection is priority 1. Understood, Admiral." "How many ships are we deploying?" Voss smiled grimly. "All of them. Everything we have in this sector. I want the Zothrak to understand what it means when they attack someone under human protection." Across human-controlled space, the call went out. Warships on patrol received new orders. Personnel on shore leave were recalled. Weapons were loaded, armor checked, medical bays stocked with supplies. The Terran Defense Force was mobilizing for its first major engagement since humanity had ventured beyond their own solar system. The fleet began gathering at Rally Point Sigma, a designated location in deep space. First came the destroyers, sleek vessels built for speed and reconnaissance. Then the cruisers, heavier ships with impressive firepower and thick armor plating. Finally, the capital ships arrived, massive dreadnoughts that represented humanity's industrial might and determination to survive in a dangerous galaxy. The flagship was the TDF Indomitable, a behemoth of metal and purpose. Admiral Voss transferred her command to this vessel, walking through corridors filled with crew moving with practiced efficiency. Every face she passed showed determination. These were professionals who understood the stakes. They were going into combat against an enemy they had never faced to protect people they had never met, in a system they had never visited. It was exactly what they had trained for. On the bridge, Voss reviewed tactical data with her senior officers. The Zothrak typically operate in wolf packs of 6 to 8 ships. They rely on plasma weapons and energy shields. Their tactics emphasize overwhelming force against weaker targets. They have never encountered human military technology. Captain Richard Stone, commanding officer of the Indomitable, studied the enemy profiles. Their ships are larger than ours, but that means nothing. Human vessels were designed differently than those of other species. Where aliens built with elegant curves and integrated systems, humans built with redundancy and brute force. A human warship could take punishment that would cripple other vessels and keep fighting. Admiral, Medical is requesting clarification on xenobiology protocols. We have limited data on Velkan physiology. Dr. Amira Hassan is our specialist, Voss replied. She has been briefed on all known information about the Velkan. She will handle first contact medical assistance. Her team is prepared for multiple species care if needed. All ships reporting ready, the operations officer announced. Fleet composition is 3 dreadnoughts, 8 cruisers, 14 destroyers, and support vessels. Total personnel is 4,300. Voss took a deep breath. This was the moment. Once they jumped, there would be no turning back. Attention all vessels, she broadcast across the fleet. We are responding to a distress call from innocent civilians under attack by slavers. Our mission is to protect and defend. We will offer the aggressors one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. If they refuse, we will demonstrate why attacking the defenseless under human watch is the last mistake they will ever make. All ships prepare for jump, on my mark. The fleet aligned. They're faster than light drives charging with barely contained energy. Voss watched the countdown on her screen, feeling the familiar tension before combat. She thought about the Velkan crew trapped on that disabled ship, terrified and hopeless, believing they were about to become slaves. She thought about the message humanity would send today to the galaxy, that there were still those who would answer a cry for help. The countdown reached 0. Mark. In a cascade of twisted light and folded space, the Terran Defense Fleet vanished from Rally Point Sigma. They raced across the void at speeds that defied conventional physics, covering thousands of light years in subjective moments. Behind them, Observation Post Delta 7 monitored their progress, while ahead in the Velari system, the Velkan waited unknowing that help was coming. The Zothrak boarding pods had just attached to the Kethvara's hull. Captain Thera heard the screech of metal as cutting torches began breaching the airlock. Her crew huddled in the cargo bay, armed with nothing more than mining tools and desperate courage. She had no way of knowing whether her distress call had reached anyone. She had no way of knowing that the most powerful military force in this sector was about to arrive. The Zothrak commander, Krax, stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the boarding operation with satisfaction. Another easy capture. The Velkan would fetch good prices at the slave markets. Their delicate builds made them ideal for detailed work in manufacturing facilities. He was already calculating profits when his sensors officer called out an alarm. Commander, multiple contacts just entered the system. Unknown configuration. They are moving toward our position at attack speed. Krax turned to his screens, confusion quickly turning to concern. 7 ships had appeared, but they looked nothing like any vessels in his database. They were angular, brutal things covered in armor plating and weapon mounts. They moved with purpose, forming a battle line between his fleet and the captured Velkan ship. Who are they? Krax demanded. Unknown species, his tactical officer replied nervously. No matching profiles in our database. They are broadcasting a message, play it. A voice came through the communication system, speaking in trade language with an accent Krax had never heard. This is Fleet Admiral Helena Voss of the Terran Defense Force. You are attacking a civilian vessel and endangering innocent lives. You will immediately cease all hostile actions, withdraw your boarding parties, and retreat from this system. This is your only warning. Krax laughed. The Terran Defense Force? He had never heard of them. Some minor species playing at military power, no doubt. His fleet outnumbered these newcomers, and his ships were proven in countless battles. Send them a response. Tell them to mind their own business, or we will add their crews to our cargo. The message was sent. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Voss received it and showed no emotion. She had expected nothing less. Target their weapon systems and engines. Prepare to demonstrate why humanity does not make empty threats. Fire on my command. The battle was about to begin, and the galaxy would learn what happened when humanity heard a cry for help. When Titans wake, the Terran Defense Fleet hung in the void like predators sizing up their prey. The ships were positioned with mathematical precision, forming overlapping fields of fire that would make retreat impossible for the Zothrak raiders. Every weapon was locked and loaded, every crew member at battle stations. The calm before the storm had a weight to it, a tension that made the very fabric of space seem to hold its breath. Admiral Voss stood at the command center of the Indomitable, her hands clasped behind her back. Around her, dozens of officers monitored their stations with the focused intensity of professionals at war. Captain Stone stood beside her, waiting for the order that would unleash humanity's firepower. The main view screen showed the Zothrak fleet, their ships still clustered around the disabled Velkan vessel like scavengers around a kill. "They are not withdrawing," the tactical officer reported. "Enemy vessels are charging weapons. They appear to be preparing for combat." Voss allowed herself a thin smile. She had hoped for a peaceful resolution, but she was not surprised by the Zothrak response. Bullies rarely backed down from confrontation until they understood the consequences. "Very well. All ships weapons free. Target their propulsion and weapons systems. I want them crippled, not vaporized. We take prisoners when possible." The order rippled through the fleet. On 14 human warships, weapon systems that had been waiting for this moment came alive. Railguns extended from their housings. Massive electromagnetic cannons capable of firing projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. Missile tubes opened, revealing ordnance designed to overwhelm point defense systems. Energy weapons, a newer addition to human arsenals, hummed with stored power. The Zothrak commander Krax watched the human ships with growing unease. His tactical officer was shouting reports, voice rising in pitch. "Their power signatures are enormous. Their targeting systems have locked onto every ship in our fleet. Commander, I recommend immediate withdrawal." Krax snarled. "We outnumber them. We have fought 100 battles. These unknown aliens think they can intimidate us? Open fire. Show them what the Zothrak Confederation does to those who interfere with our business." The Zothrak fleet unleashed their weapons. Plasma bolts, superheated to temperatures that could melt through most ship armor, streaked across the void in brilliant cascades of destructive energy. They struck the human vessels dead center, exactly where the targeting computers had aimed. The Zothrak crews watched their screens, waiting to see the enemy ships break apart under the assault. What happened next would echo across the galaxy for generations. The plasma bolts hit the Indomitable's armor plating and dissipated, their energy absorbed by ablative layers specifically designed to counter directed energy weapons. The massive dreadnought did not even shudder from the impact. Across the human fleet, the same scenario played out. The Zothrak weapons, which had shattered the defenses of countless species, were simply inadequate against human military technology. "Damage report," Voss said calmly. "Minor scoring to outer hull plates on ships 3 and 7. No penetration, no casualties. All ships remain combat effective." Her voice carried across the fleet communications. "Demonstration of force authorized. Let them see what they are dealing with." The human fleet fired. The difference between the two sides became immediately, horrifically clear. The railguns spoke first, launching solid projectiles accelerated to velocities that made them effectively kinetic energy weapons. These were not plasma bolts that could be absorbed by shields or deflected by electromagnetic fields. These were chunks of tungsten and depleted uranium, moving at speeds that made them unstoppable. The lead Zothrak warship took 3 railgun rounds in rapid succession. The first punched through their forward shield generator, the second tore through the engineering section, and the third crippled their main reactor. The ship went dark, tumbling through space as emergency systems struggled to maintain life support. The rest of the Zothrak fleet fared no better. Human missiles followed the railgun barrage, swarming toward their targets in clouds of synchronized death. Point defense systems on the Zothrak ships tried desperately to shoot them down, but there were too many, coming from too many angles. When the missiles hit, they did so with precision. Engine sections exploded. Weapon batteries tore free from hull mountings. Communication arrays shattered into debris. In less than 3 minutes, the entire Zothrak fleet was crippled. Not destroyed, that would have been easy. The human forces had deliberately targeted specific systems, demonstrating a level of fire control and tactical precision that seemed impossible. Ships that moments ago had been confident raiders now drifted helplessly, their power cores offline, their weapons silent. "Status of enemy vessels," Voss asked. "All enemy ships disabled. No enemy casualties reported, though multiple injuries from combat damage. Their life support systems remain functional. They are no longer a threat." "Good. Captain Chen, you are cleared for boarding operations." Retrieve our Velkan friends and secure the enemy vessels. Captain Sarah Chen commanded the boarding force, 300 Marines in powered armor waiting in the deployment bays. The moment she received the order, her teams launched. Boarding pods shot across the gap between fleets, small armored craft moving with startling agility. Chen's pod attached to the hull of the Zothrak flagship with a magnetic clamp. Breaching charges detonated, cutting through the outer armor in a controlled explosion. The Marines poured through, weapons ready. The interior of the Zothrak ship was chaos. Emergency lights flickered, smoke filled the corridors, and the crew stumbled through the darkness. Stunned by the speed of their defeat, Zothrak personnel who showed weapons were disarmed with non-lethal force. Those who surrendered were secured and moved to holding areas. Shen moved through the ship with practiced efficiency, her armor sensors mapping the layout, locating crew members, searching for any remaining threats. She found the bridge where Commander Crack stood, clutching a sidearm with trembling hands. "Drop the weapon," Chen ordered, her voice amplified by her armor's external speakers. "It is over." Crax looked at her, seeing his reflection in her armored faceplate. He saw something in that moment that broke his spirit. These were not merchants or civilians. These were warriors, and they had defeated his entire fleet without suffering a single casualty. He dropped the weapon. Other boarding teams hit the remaining Zothrak ships simultaneously. Resistance was minimal, mostly shocked confusion rather than organized defense. The Marines moved with discipline, securing each vessel methodically. But their primary mission was not the raiders. It was the Velkan. Lieutenant Marcus Cole led the team that breached the Kethvara. They cut through the Zothrak boarding pod still attached to the hull, gaining entry to the Velkan ship. Inside, they found Captain Thera and her crew huddled in the cargo bay, surrounded by a dozen Zothrak soldiers who had been in the process of taking them prisoner. The Zothrak soldiers spun toward the new arrivals, weapons raised. What they saw froze them in place. Armored figures stood 2 meters tall, weapons aimed with unwavering steadiness. The armor was matte black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The visors glowed with faint blue light, giving the Marines an almost supernatural appearance. "Everyone remains calm," Cole said, his translator broadcasting in the local trade language. "Zothrak personnel, drop your weapons immediately. Velkan crew, please stay where you are. You are safe now." The Zothrak soldiers looked at each other, then at the terrified Velkan they had been about to enslave. Slowly, they lowered their weapons and placed them on the deck. Cole's team moved forward, securing the raiders quickly and efficiently. Then Cole approached Captain Thera, who stared at him with wide eyes, her scales cycling through colors of confusion and hope. "I am Lieutenant Cole of the Terran Defense Force. We received your distress call. You and your crew are safe now." Thera felt her legs give out. She would have collapsed if Norvin had not caught her. "We sent that message," she whispered. "We did not think anyone would come. We especially did not think anyone would come to help us." Cole deactivated his helmet, revealing a human face for the first time. He was young, perhaps 30 standard years, with dark skin and warm eyes. He smiled gently. "Your message was heard. Humanity does not ignore calls for help. Let us get you and your people to medical care." The evacuation of the Velkan crew proceeded smoothly. Human medical personnel led by Dr. Amira Hassan boarded the Kethvara with equipment modified for Velkan physiology. They treated injuries, provided hydration supplements, and offered reassurance in soft voices. Dr. Hassan approached Thera, holding a medical scanner. "Captain, I need to check you for injuries. May I examine you?" Thera nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Hassan worked quickly, her movements practiced and professional. "Your respiration is elevated, but that is consistent with stress. I am detecting some dehydration and minor contusions. Nothing serious. You were very brave sending that distress call. It saved your crew." Back on the Indomitable, Admiral Voss received reports from all boarding teams. All Velkan crew secured and receiving medical attention. Enemy forces captured and confined.
Enemy vessels disabled but repairable.
No human casualties. 0 friendly losses. Voss allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. This had gone as well as could be hoped. Not only had they saved the Velkan, but they had done so with such overwhelming force that the message would be unmistakable. Humanity was now a power in this region of space. "Open a channel to all Zothrak vessels," she ordered, and broadcast it on all frequencies. "I want everyone in range to hear this." The communication systems linked every ship, both human and Zothrak. When Voss spoke, her voice carried across the void. This is Fleet Admiral Helena Voss to all Zothrak personnel. You attacked a civilian vessel and attempted to enslave innocent beings. This is unacceptable. Your ships have been disabled and your weapons confiscated. You will be escorted to the nearest Galactic Council station, where you will face justice for your crimes. She paused, letting her words sink in. Let this serve as a warning to anyone who preys on the weak. Earth has entered the galactic community, and we will not tolerate slavery, piracy, or unprovoked aggression against civilian populations. Any species that engages in such behavior will answer to the Terran Defense Force. We do not seek conflict, but we will not hesitate to defend those who cannot defend themselves. On the disabled Zothrak flagship, Commander Krax listened to the transmission in his secured holding cell. He understood now what his fleet had encountered. These were not traders or explorers. These were apex predators from a world where survival meant constant struggle, where evolution had produced beings capable of organized violence on a scale that dwarfed anything the Zothrak had imagined. He had heard rumors of Deathworlds, planets where conditions were so harsh that the native species developed capabilities far beyond the norm. Earth was apparently one of these worlds. The humans were Deathworlders. Captain Thera was brought to the Indomitable's observation deck, where she could see her ship surrounded by the protective formation of human vessels. Admiral Voss joined her there, standing beside the smaller alien with respect. Captain Thera, I apologize that we could not arrive sooner. I understand your ship suffered damage. Thera turned to look at the human admiral. Her scales showed colors of gratitude and awe. You came at all. That is more than we dared hope. We sent a message into the void expecting silence. Instead, you answered. Why? Why would your people risk themselves for strangers? Voss considered the question. Because it was the right thing to do. Because we believe that civilized beings have a responsibility to protect one another. Because hearing a cry for help and doing nothing is not who we are. She gestured to the fleet around them. Humanity spent most of its history fighting itself, but we learned eventually that cooperation is stronger than conflict. When we reached the stars, we decided to apply that lesson on a galactic scale. Thera's scales shimmered with emotions she could not name. The other species will learn of this. They will know that humans came to our aid. Voss nodded. Yes, they will. And they will have to decide what that means. Some will welcome us as allies. Others will fear us as potential enemies. But everyone will know that humanity stands for something. That we will defend the innocent against aggressors. The Velkin captain looked out at the stars, seeing them differently now. Her people had always believed the galaxy was a dangerous place where only the strong survived, and the weak were consumed. But perhaps that was not the complete truth. Perhaps there was room for something better. Thank you, Admiral Voss. On behalf of my crew and my entire species, thank you. You have shown us that there is still honor in the cosmos. The two captains stood together in silence, watching as human crews worked to repair the Kethvara and secure the captured raider vessels. In the distance, stars burned with ancient light, and somewhere among them more distress signals were waiting to be heard. The battle was over, but the consequences were just beginning. Echoes across the stars. The aftermath of battle always brought a strange combination of relief and exhaustion. The crew of the Indomitable moved through their duties with the practiced efficiency of professionals, but there was an undercurrent of satisfaction in their work. They had accomplished their mission without a single casualty. The Velkin were safe, the raiders were captured, and humanity had announced its presence on the galactic stage in unmistakable terms. Dr. Amira Hassan worked in the medical bay, treating the last of the Velkin crew members. Most of their injuries were minor, bruises and lacerations sustained during the initial attack, along with dehydration and stress-related symptoms. The Velkin physiology was fascinating from a medical perspective. Their permeable skin required careful handling, and their lower bone density made them fragile by human standards. But they were also remarkably resilient in their own way, adapted to their specific environmental niche. Captain Thera sat on an examination bed, watching as Hassan prepared a hydration supplement. The Velkin captain's scales had regained some of their color, shifting from the pale gray of fear to more vibrant blues and greens. "Tell me about your world," Hassan said conversationally as she worked. "What is Earth like?" Thera blinked, surprised by the personal question. Earth is classified as a death world by the Galactic Council. High gravity, extreme weather patterns, abundant predators, disease pressure far beyond most inhabited planets. Life on Earth evolved in constant competition and conflict. Hassan smiled as she administered the supplement through a dermal patch designed for Velkan biology. That is what the reports say. But those reports do not capture what it is really like. Earth is beautiful. We have oceans that cover most of the planet, mountains that touch the clouds, forests filled with millions of species. Yes, it was a harsh environment for our ancestors. That harshness made us strong, but it also taught us to cooperate. Humans survived not just through individual strength, but through working together. Thera absorbed this information, her scales flickering with curiosity. And now you travel the stars, bringing that cooperation to others. Hassan nodded. That is the goal. We have seen what happens when species turn against each other. Earth has a long, painful history of conflict. Wars over resources, territory, beliefs. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times. But we learned, we grew. When we finally reached space and encountered other species, we decided to be better than our history. On the bridge, Admiral Voss reviewed tactical reports with Captain Stone. The engagement had been analyzed from every angle, and the data was being compiled for transmission back to Terra Command. This will be studied at every military academy for decades, Stone observed. A textbook example of overwhelming force applied with precision. We need to be careful how we present this, Voss said thoughtfully. Yes, we won decisively, but I do not want the galaxy to see us as warmongering bullies. We acted in defense of innocence. That context matters, Stone nodded. The Velkan will spread word of what happened here, and the Zothrak survivors will tell their version. How do you think the galactic community will react? With fear mostly, Voss replied. They will see our capabilities and wonder what we might do with that power. Some species will want to ally with us. Others will work to contain us. A few might see us as a threat that needs to be eliminated. We have just become very important, very quickly. The conversation was interrupted by the communications officer. Admiral, we are receiving multiple transmissions. News of the engagement is already spreading through subspace channels. I am picking up commentary from at least a dozen species. Some of it is well alarmed. Put it on screen, Voss ordered. The main display filled with text and audio feeds, translated by the ship's systems into standard human languages. The galactic news networks were in chaos. A Thanari commentator spoke in rapid clicking sounds that the translator converted to speech. Unconfirmed reports suggest that an unknown species has engaged and defeated a Zothrak Confederation fleet in the Velari system. The vessels are reportedly from a species calling themselves humans, originating from a death world designated Earth. This represents the first major military engagement involving this species. Authorities are urging calm, but many species are expressing concern about this development. Another feed showed a Qualix ambassador addressing their home government. We must approach Earth with caution. Any species capable of defeating the Zothrak so decisively possesses military capabilities that rival our own. I recommend immediate diplomatic outreach to establish communications and assess their intentions. The reports continued, each one analyzing the situation from different perspectives. Voss listened to them all, understanding that humanity was now under a microscope. Every word, every action would be scrutinized by civilizations that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. In the detention area, Commander Krax sat in his cell, contemplating his defeat. He had led raiding fleets for 15 years, capturing hundreds of ships and thousands of slaves. He had believed himself invincible. That illusion had been shattered in less than 5 minutes of combat. A human Marine stood guard outside his cell, weapon held at rest but ready. The Marine's face was impassive, professional. Krax called out to him, "Human, why did your admiral spare us? You could have destroyed our ships. Instead, you disabled them. You could have killed us. Instead, you took us prisoner. Why?" The Marine looked at him for a long moment before responding. "Because Admiral Voss believes in justice, not revenge. You will face trial for your crimes. That is more mercy than you showed your victims." Krax absorbed this. "Where I come from, mercy is weakness. Strength is all that matters." The Marine shook his head. "Then where you come from is a place that produces people like you, people who prey on the defenseless. Humanity learned a long time ago that true strength is not about dominating others. It is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. You are about to learn that lesson the hard way." On the Kethvara, Captain Thera gathered her crew for a meeting. Human engineers had managed to restore partial power to the ship, enough to run life support and basic systems. The engine would need extensive repairs, but they would survive. Thera looked at the faces of her people, seeing relief and gratitude mixed with uncertainty about the future. "We have been rescued by a species we did not know existed. They risked their lives for us without hesitation. They asked for nothing in return except that we be safe. I do not know what this means for the Velkin people, but I know what it means to me. It means there is hope in this galaxy. It means that not all powerful species use their strength to oppress others." Norvin, her second officer, raised a hand. "Captain, what do we tell the Council? They will want to know everything about the humans." Thera considered this carefully. "We tell them the truth. That humanity is a species from a death world with capabilities that rival or exceed our own. But we also tell them that humanity chose to help us when they had no obligation to do so. We tell them that these are people of honor. The rest will be up to the Council to decide." 6,000 light-years away on the neutral station Hub Prime, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 43 species gathered in the massive chamber, their translators creating a babble of sounds as they debated the news from the Velari system. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a sphere 500 meters in diameter with seating arranged in concentric rings around a central platform. The Council Arbiter, a Quen named Salaxa, called for order. The chiming of her communication staff echoed through the chamber. "Honored delegates, we are here to discuss the intervention by the species known as humans in the Velari incident." I recognized the delegate from the Velkin Enclave. The Velkin delegate, an elder named Corvin, moved to the central platform. His scales were brilliant silver, a sign of his age and wisdom. "Esteemed council members, I have just received a detailed report from Captain Thera of the mining vessel Kethvara. Her ship was attacked by Zothrak raiders and would have been captured if not for the intervention of the Terran Defense Force. Humanity saved the lives of 47 Velkin citizens, and did so with minimal force. They could have annihilated the Zothrak fleet, but chose instead to disable and capture them. This shows remarkable restraint." A Draxian delegate, a large reptilian being named Korth, stood abruptly. "Restraint? They obliterated an entire raiding fleet in minutes. Their weapons technology is clearly superior to anything in this sector. That makes them dangerous, regardless of their stated intentions." Corvin turned to face Korth. "Would you prefer they had done nothing? Would you prefer that Velkin citizens had been sold into slavery, while species with the power to help stood by and watched?" The Draxian had no immediate answer. The chamber erupted in debate. Admiral Voss watched the council proceedings via subspace transmission. The meeting was being broadcast on public channels, allowing anyone with the proper equipment to observe. She sat in her ready room, a cup of coffee growing cold on her desk, as she listened to dozens of species argue about humanity's place in the galactic community. Captain Stone entered carrying a datapad. "Admiral, we have received a direct communication request from the Galactic Council. They want to speak with you." Voss stood smoothing her uniform. "Well, we knew this was coming. Set up a quantum link. I will address them directly." The holographic system activated, projecting Voss's image into the council chamber on Hub Prime. 43 species suddenly fell silent, staring at the human admiral who had just announced her species' presence in such dramatic fashion. Arbiter Salaxa spoke first. "Admiral Voss of Earth, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you to this assembly. We have many questions about your species and your intentions." Voss met the Arbiter's gaze steadily. "Arbiter, Council members, I understand your concerns. Humanity is new to the galactic stage. Our intervention in the Velari system was our first major action beyond our own space. I want to be clear about our motivations and our principles. We responded to a distress call from innocent civilians under attack. We offered the aggressors an opportunity to withdraw peacefully. When they refused and chose violence, we defended the victims with appropriate force." A Cerulean delegate raised a tentacle. "Appropriate force? You crippled 7 warships in minutes. That suggests military capabilities that rival the most powerful species in known space. What are Earth's territorial ambitions? Do you intend to expand your influence through military might?" Voss shook her head firmly. "Humanity has no interest in conquest or domination. We seek peaceful coexistence and cooperation with other species. However, we will not stand by while innocents are attacked by slavers, pirates, or aggressors. We believe that civilized species have a responsibility to protect one another. That is the foundation of our foreign policy." The Draxian delegate, Korth, spoke again. "Pretty words, Admiral, But every species claims peaceful intentions while building massive military fleets. How do we know Earth will not use its power to impose its will on others? Because our history has taught us the cost of such behavior, Voss replied. Earth has experienced countless wars, conflicts that nearly destroyed our entire civilization. We learned eventually that cooperation is stronger than conquest. We apply that lesson now to our relations with other species. We will defend ourselves and others, but we will not be aggressors. The chamber filled with whispered conversations. The delegates were clearly divided in their opinions. Some saw humanity as a potential ally, others as a threat. The arbiter raised her staff again. Admiral Voss, the Council will need time to deliberate on Earth's status. In the meantime, we ask that you respect established territorial boundaries and engage in no further military actions without Council approval. Voss kept her expression neutral. Arbiter, with respect, humanity will continue to respond to distress calls from any species under attack. We will not seek Council approval to save lives. However, we commit to operating within established laws regarding territorial sovereignty and rules of engagement. We will coordinate with the Council whenever possible. It was a diplomatic but firm statement. Humanity would not subordinate its moral principles to bureaucratic approval. The message was clear. Earth was offering partnership, not submission. The Council session continued for hours, but Voss had made her point. She returned to the Indomitable's bridge, where her crew worked to prepare the captured Zothrak vessels for transport. Captain Thera requested permission to visit the flagship, and Voss welcomed her to the bridge. The Velkan captain looked around in wonder at the human vessel, taking in the efficiency of the operations and the quiet professionalism of the crew. Admiral, my people wish to establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth. The Velkan enclave may be small compared to other civilizations, but we have resources and knowledge that might be valuable to humanity. More than that, we wish to be your friends. Voss smiled warmly. Captain Thera, humanity would be honored to establish relations with the Velkan. You were our first contact in this region of space, though the circumstances were not ideal. We look forward to learning about your culture and sharing our own. The two captains shook hands, a human gesture that Thera had learned about. The physical contact was meaningful, a symbol of trust between species. As news of the alliance spread, other species began sending diplomatic inquiries to Earth. Some were genuinely interested in cooperation. Others were simply hedging their bets by establishing contact with this new power. The Zothrak Confederation faced an internal crisis. The defeat of one of their fleets by an unknown species had shaken confidence in their military supremacy. Several subjugated species saw an opportunity and began planning rebellions. The Confederation's grip on its empire, maintained through fear and violence, was suddenly uncertain. Weeks later, back on Earth, Admiral Voss addressed a joint session of the Terran Congress. She stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled representatives of humanity's unified government. We have taken our first steps as defenders of the innocent in galactic affairs. This will change how other species see us and how we see ourselves. We will face challenges, both diplomatic and military, but I believe we have set the right course. We have shown the galaxy that humanity stands for something, that we will not ignore suffering when we have the power to help. The Congress erupted in applause. Not everyone agreed with the interventionist policy. There were debates about costs and risks and the dangers of involving humanity in conflicts that did not directly threaten Earth. But the majority supported the principle that had guided the rescue of the Velkan. That power came with responsibility. In the months that followed, more distress signals arrived at human listening posts. Some were legitimate calls for help. Others were traps set by species hoping to test or exploit humanity's protective instincts. The Terran Defense Force responded to each with careful analysis, learning to distinguish real emergencies from deceptions. They conducted 17 more rescue operations, saving crews from 6 different species. Each operation added to humanity's reputation as defenders of the weak. New alliances formed. Species that had been isolated or vulnerable began reaching out to Earth, seeking protection or partnership. A coalition began to take shape, informal at first but growing stronger with each shared mission. Humanity found itself at the center of a network of species bound together by mutual defense and cooperation. Not everyone was pleased. Powerful civilizations that had dominated their regions through strength and intimidation saw humanity as a threat to the established order. Diplomatic tensions rose. There were incidents, confrontations, moments where war seemed possible, but humanity held to its principles. They would defend themselves and others, but they would not strike first. They would seek peace, but they would not accept injustice. Admiral Voss stood once again on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking out at the stars. Another distress call had just arrived, this time from a mining colony in the outer reaches. The call was faint, barely detectable, but it was there. Someone needed help. Captain Stone approached her. "Admiral, we have plotted a course. We can be there in 18 hours. Voss nodded. "Alert the fleet. We move in 15 minutes. And so it continued. Across the vast darkness of space, signals reached out, desperate pleas from those in danger, and humanity answered. Every time. Without fail. Because that was who they were. Because when they had been alone in the cosmos, afraid and uncertain, they had wished for someone to answer their calls. Now they were that someone. The Deathworlders had become the protectors, and the galaxy would never be the same.